Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's daf, which is Shekelim Yud Beis. We begin right on top. Says the Mishnah, HaMagdish Nechasav. If one is Magdish all his assets, he commits it to the Hegdish of the Beis HaMikdash. We know Stam Hegdish goes to where? The Bedek HaBayis. So if it's unspecified, it is directed to the Beis HaMikdash's building fund, the maintenance fund. So this fellow was Magdish all his belongings. HaMagdish Nechasav, V'hayu ben Dvorim Ru'uin Likar Banois HaTzibur. We find amongst his possessions some things which are roy, which are suitable specifically for Karbanis Tzibur, which the Gemara will say is referring to Keteris. Now this Keteris has acquired a Kedusha of Bedek HaBayis, not Kedushas Mizbeach. And we want to use this Keteris for the Mizbeach. What do? Says the Mishnah, Yidnosnu Umnim Mischaron. We have some workers who did a job for the Beis HaMikdash. We simply take this Keteris, we transfer it to them. And the Kedusha of this Keteris will now be transferred onto their efforts, onto the work that they did, which is really an intangible, but that works. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So we give it to them for their salary. Now they have in their possession Keteris. We turn around and we repurchase that Keteris using this year's Trumas Halishka funds, in which case this Keteris can now be considered part of this year's supply and be brought in the Mizbeach. Amalei ben Asai, how could you do this? Eina hi hamida. This is inconsistent with the previous Mishnah. You can't just take Kedusha of Keteris and transfer it onto something intangible. That doesn't work. Ella, rather as follows. Fri Jun meihen schar umnim. We follow the same formula discussed in the previous Mishnah. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the previous Mishnah as well. You don't have to actually transfer the Kedusha onto something tangible. He holds, the Karban Eder brings a pasuk, v'asoli migdash, that the asiyah, the work, the malacha, is mishali, is financed by the moment of Hegdish. So you can take Hegdish money and transfer it to the workers on account of their work. The labor, the effort. That in itself justifies a transfer of funds. You don't need to have something tangible on which to transfer that Kedusha. So that's Rabbi Yehuda. But Nazir says no. Eina hi hamida. This is inconsistent with the previous Mishnah, which tells us clearly that you can't just take Kedusha and transfer it onto something intangible. Ella, rather follow the following procedure. We go ahead and separate some Keteris, which equals the value of the wages owed to the umnim, to the craftsman. But we don't give it to them directly at this point. We have some money, which was designated to pay their wages, money which is Kaddish. And as you learned yesterday, you take the Kedusha of that money, you transfer it onto the improvement in the building itself, onto the binyan. So now the binyan is Kaddish, and the money is free of any Kedusha. This Kedusha was removed. Now, we can take the Kedusha of the Keteris and transfer it onto that money. We take the Kedusha of the Keteris and we transfer it on that money, which is not Kaddish. And now we can take the Keteris and give it to the Umnin. We hand it over to the workers. We don't leave it there too long. Certainly we repurchase that Keteris supply, which is very valuable and was made using very distinct and specific ingredients and a very specific process. So we want to repurchase that from Truma Chadasha to be used for this year's Karbanis. We know something which is roy from Mizbeach. We're meant to reacquire it so that it's used for the Mizbeach. That's the first portion of the Mishnah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you could simply give them Keteris for their work. According to Ben Azai, you have to go through this process of transferring the Kedusha first on something tangible. Now you can take the Keteris from which the Kedusha has been removed, give that Keteris to the Umnin, and then repurchase it. Continues the Mishnah, Magdish Nechasav, if one simply gave away all his belongings to Hegdish, which means to Bedek HaBayis. Now, amongst his belongings, there were some behemoths, which are technically suitable for Mizbeach use. Zecharim, unekevis. What do you do with that? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, everything goes to Bedek HaBayis. He didn't say otherwise. We just assume that everything is directed to the building fund. So what do we do with the animals? Very simple. Zecharim, we sell them to people who need an oila. When a kevoitz, what do we do with them? Yimachru l'tzarchei zivchei shlamim. We sell it to people who need a shlamim. And the money received in exchange, udmeyen yiplu im shar nachasav lebedek habayis, joins the other possessions to the bedek habayis fund. So although we want the animal to actually be brought as a carbon, that's why we sell it to customers who will use it as a carbon. But the bottom line is that its value will be directed to the bedek habayis fund. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent throughout, just as the other items in his hegdish go to bedek habayis. The animals as well. He didn't differentiate. He didn't specify otherwise. We just assume it's one package deal, everything to bedek habayis. Rabbi Yehuda says no. We assume that a person wants his hegdish to reach the highest spheres of kedusha. Shoot for the gold. He wants his behemoths to be brought on the mizbeach itself. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Zechar ma'atzman, Yikroilis. We take the scharm in this pack, amongst his assets, we put it on the mizbeach itself as an oila. Oila is the highest form, it's completely burnt on the mizbeach. Unekevis, which can't be brought as an oila. Okay, we still direct it for oila use. We sell it to a person who needs a shlam. We take that money received in exchange and use it to purchase a oila and put it on the mizbeach as well. Of course, the rest of the object, the rest of his possessions, yiplu bedek habayis, will be directed to bedek habayis. According to Bishul, we do differentiate between items which are meant for bedek habayis and behemoths which can potentially be used as a carbon oila, in which case we assume that's what he wanted to do. Amar Rabbi Kiva, Roya ani estir Rabbi Lezer. Medir Rabbi Shua, the truth is I favor Rabbi Lezer's opinion more than Rabbi Shua. Why? Rabbi Lezer hishvas midaisa. Rabbi Lezer was straight and consistent throughout. Just as the other objects go to bedek habayis, we assume everything shares the same destiny. Otherwise, he would have said something. So it's one commitment, one hegdish, everything to bedek habayis. Rabbi Shua chilik, Rabbi Shua split. This is bedek habayis, that's the mizbeach. It's unlikely that this is what he had in mind. He would have said so. So Rabbi Kiva likes Rabbi Lezer's opinion. Amar Apafias, I'll strike a compromise. Shemati, I heard from my Rebbeim, both shitas are plausible. Depends in what circumstance. Ha-magdish beferish, Kedir Rabbi Lezer. If he specified, if he itemized his donation, he says, you know what, I'm giving my animals, my other items, to hegdish. In this case, since he made direct reference to animals and still did not specify I want it to be used as an oila, apparently that's not what he had in mind. He's perfectly fine with everything going to bedek habayis. So ha-magdish beferish, in this case, the halach is like Kedir Rabbi Lezer. It's all to bedek habayis. Ha-magdish stam. But if he was magdish without itemizing his donation, he just said, I'm giving all my assets to hegdish. Kedir Rabbi Shua. In this case, the halacha follows Rabbi Shua. Because you have no raya otherwise. You have no raya that he didn't want his animals going to mizbeach. He didn't make reference to the animals. He just used a very, very general term. I'm giving everything to hegdish. Perhaps we should assume that he wants the hegdish to reach the highest level of kedusha. He wants his animals on the mizbeach as an idol. We have no reason to think otherwise. And therefore, in this case, we follow Rabbi Shua. The animals go to the mizbeach as an oila, and the other object to bedek habayis. Continues the Mishnah. Magdish nechasef. If one is magdish's possessions, and there's some items there which are suitable for mizbeach, not behemoths, but other types of things. Yenos, wines, shmonim, oils, v'oifes, and birds. What do you do here? Rabbi Lezer Omer, he says in this case as well, and the Rishonim read it Rabbi Lozer, not Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer holds everything goes by the Kabbayis. This is a different shita of Rabbi Lozer Omer, and he actually learns it from a pasuk, as we're going to see in the Gemara. He says, we take all these items, wines, etc., we sell it to those who need it for their carbon, and the money received in exchange is used to purchase carbonos oil. So the birds, the wine, the oil, you sell it off to people who need them for carbonos. You take the money and buy an oil. And the other items which were donated by this fellow are directed to bedek habayis. So in summary, we began with the Ketores. According to Rabbi Kiva, you can just give it to the workers. According to Ben Azza, you have to transfer the kedusha on something tangible. We discussed the person who was magdish all his assets. Rabbi Eliezer says everything goes to bedek habayis because he didn't indicate otherwise. Rabbi Shua says we assume he wanted the best for his hegdish, so animals are used as oilos, and the other items go to bedek habayis. Rabbi Eliezer concluded the Mishnah with the halacha of yenei shmonim and oifos, which are used to purchase oilos for the mizbech. Continues the Gemara, ha-magdish v'chulu kabanas tzibur. So this fellow was magdish as a chasim, and the Mishnah begins by saying, well, we found something in there which is roi for kabanas tzibur. Now an animal is really roi for karban yachid as well. So what does the Mishnah mean? Rabbi Yehuda Amar, keteris. We found keteris amongst his possessions. You see, Rabbi Yehuda, as we learned yesterday, holds that you can crush the keteris in a kli choil, in a privately owned kli. So that explains why this fellow had privately owned keteris in his possession. Amar behoishia, no. He disagrees. He holds that keteris can only be produced in the kli sharis. So why would this fellow have private keteris? Tipater. We must explain the Mishnah as follows. It was a one-time phenomenon. This fellow was a keteris expert from the Beis Haftinas family. When he was owed wages, perhaps he would take some keteris temporarily. They would give it to him and of course repurchase it. Now, at that moment he got his keteris. He decided to be magdish as nechasim, keteris included, and that's how we have keteris which was donated by an individual. Now Rakiva says you can give it to the umnin. Ben Azai says no, you have to transfer the kedusha on something tangible. Ma tama de Ben Azai, what's his reason? There has to be something tangible. He holds sheina hegdish meschalel al malacha. You can't be mechal, you can't transfer the kedusha of hegdish just on work. El al amois has to be something tangible like money. Continues the Gemara. Tamona tanina. We learned in the Mishnah and Tmura, yesh bekocha bedek habayis. We have the following things found exclusively when something was given over to the bedek habayis fund, which the elements don't apply to something which was given to the mizbeach. Shestam hekdeshes to bedek habayis. An unspecified hegdish donation is presumed to go to bedek habayis. We learn this from a pasuk, and not to the mizbeach. Number 2, hegdish bedek habayis chalal hakoil. The hegdish of bedek habayis can apply to anything, a stone, a piece of wood, as opposed to hegdish mizbeach, which only works with something which is roi from ha'akrava, from mizbeach. Umayal megedolein. Suppose there's some growth, some offspring, some milk coming from the bedek habayis animal. If one misuses that, he commits me'ilah, as opposed to a carbon. The gedulim, the outgrowth, the offspring is not, doesn't have the same level as the original carbon. There's no me'ilah. And finally, the kahanim have no benefit from bedek habayis materials. It totally belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. Nothing for the kahanim in there. Whereas kachim mizbeach, well, it's an oila, they can take the hide. When it's a chatas, they have the basar. In any case, this mission tells us that stam hegdish is the bedek habayis. If one donated his entire estate, everything goes to bedek habayis. Whose shita is this? Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chananya, the Rab Eliezer, it's our Rabbi Eliezer and our Mishnah, who says likewise. The Tanina, as we learned, ha-magdish nechasav. If one gives away all his nechasim, amongst his belongings we find a behema which is suitable for akrava. What does Rabbi Eliezer say? Everything the bedek habayis. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Zecharim yimachru l'tzarech oilas. You sell to people who need an oila. The kevas yimachru l'tzarech ezich shlam. The kevas are sold to people who need a shlam. And what happens to the money? Ud mein yiplu im shar nechasim bedek habayis. It joins the other items to the bedek habayis fund. Rabbi Eliezer holds stam hegdish lebedek habayis. An unspecified donation goes to bedek habayis, despite the fact that you have some behemoths there. Everything goes to bedek habayis. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Tamad Rabbi Eliezer. Everything needs a source. What is his makar? That everything goes to bedek habayis, even animals. V'ishki yagdish is basically kodesh l'Hashem. if one is Magdash's house, Kodesh Lashem, it's completely to Hashem. What is that? Bedek HaBayis. As we just mentioned, Bedek HaBayis is completely to Hashem. Kehanim have nothing from it. Now, what are we speaking about? Ish Kiyadish is Beisai. Bama Anon Kaimen. What is this referring to? In Bebeis Dira, he's giving away his actual home. Kfar Ksiv. Vim HaMagdish Yigalas Beisai. Donating one's home is already discussed elsewhere in a different parsha. That's not the topic of conversation here. Elo ki anon kaimen. What then are we speaking about? When the pasuk says "V'ish ki yagdish es beisei kodesh Hashem b'magdish nechasav," the person gives away all his belongings. Beisei means his household. He gives everything away. We have chafetzim, we have cars, we have behemoths, everything he gave away. And what does the pasuk say? Kodesh Hashem. It goes exclusively Hashem to the Kabayis. From here we learn Shastam Hekdeshus to the Kabayis, as Rabbi Yehuda holds, and even the behemoths, they share the same destiny as the other items. Everything goes to the Kabayis. Now the Gemara will present three variations of the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rishon. Well, what are the circumstances of their machlekes? Omar Rabbi Zeira said as follows: Rav Chuna said in the name of B'Shem Rab, B'ma Pligin. When is there a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda says all to Bedek HaBayis, Rabbi Shua says animals to Mizbeach, and the rest of Bedek HaBayis, B'Maglish Nechasav. And one gave away all his Nechasim. There are some behemoths there, some other items, in which case the other items certainly will go to Bedek HaBayis. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, since inevitably a part of his donation is to Bedek HaBayis, we assume it's all one package deal. He didn't differentiate. He didn't specify otherwise. Everything goes to Bedek HaBayis. Avo b'Magdish Edrei, but suppose he's Magdish his herd, only animals. There are no other items there. Kol Amamoidei, all agree, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees, Shul Mizbeach, it goes to the Mizbeach. Because in this case, we have no raya, we have no indication otherwise. When he has some regular items involved in his donation, which go to Bedek HaBayis, we assume just as that goes to Bedek HaBayis, since he didn't differentiate, he didn't say otherwise, we assume everything goes to Bedek HaBayis. But when all he has is animals, we can safely assume he certainly wanted the best and the highest for his donation to the Mizbeach. That's the first approach. Rabbi Ba said like this. Rav Chuna B'Shem Rav explained, Ma Pligin, when is there a machlekes? Where Rabbi Yehuda says everything to Bedek HaBayis, and Shua says split the pot. But Magdish Edr. When he's Magdish, only his herd, only behemoths. So in that case, Rabbi Shua says, let's assume animals, he probably wants karbanis. Rabbi Yehuda says no, he didn't explain himself. Stam Hegdish is a Bedek HaBayis. It goes to Bedek HaBayis. That's because he was Magdish a herd of animals. Aval be Magdish Nechasav. But suppose he was Magdish all his belongings, animals and other items, other objects as well, which are going to Bedek HaBayis. Kol Alma Moidi, all agree, even if Shua agrees in this case. Shua Bedek HaBayis, everything is headed in the same direction for Bedek HaBayis, because even if Shua agrees that in this case, look, he didn't explain himself. And we know that some items go to Bedek HaBayis. He didn't differentiate, he didn't bother expressing otherwise. He should have said, well, I know the Parker pens are going to Bedek HaBayis, but the animals should be L'Mizbeach. He didn't bother expressing that. Therefore, even if Yeshua agrees in this case, everything is one bundle, one package deal, one commitment, all to Bedek HaBayis. So in summary, going to the first approach, Rabbi Yehudah's sheet is only when there are some items there that are going to Bedek HaBayis, in which case we say everything follows suit. But if there are only animals there, if Rabbi Yehuda would agree, he probably wants it on the Mizbeach. Going to the second approach, Rabbi Shua would agree. In the case where there's a raya that he wants it to Bedek HaBayis. For instance, there are some items going to Bedek HaBayis, and animals there as well. Even Rabbi Shua would agree in this case. There is a clear indication that he wants it all to Bedek HaBayis. He wants it all to share the same destiny, because he didn't express anything otherwise. And we know that some things go to Bedek HaBayis in this case. Why didn't he say, well, I want the animals to share a different destiny? He didn't say that. That's a raya. Even according to Yeshua, that's a raya, that it's all to Bedek HaBayis. Al da te Rabbi Zeira nicha. So the first shot of Rabbi Zeira, we understand, it works well. But Vikasha al Rabbi Ba, but the second approach is difficult. You're telling me in a case where it was a joint donation, animals plus other objects, even Rabbi Shua agrees, it all goes to Bedek HaBayis. It seems to be a bit difficult to grasp that, because we know that really one is not meant to be magdish a behema to Bedek HaBayis, a behema which has no mum. He's over an Isser, it's an Isser as say. You're meant to be magdish l'mizbech, not to Bedek HaBayis. So to go ahead and say, to go and suggest that in this case where he was magdish as nechasim, behemoths and other objects, all agree, even if Yeshua agrees that it's headed for Bedek HaBayis, it seems a bit difficult. Nobody holds that at l'mizbech. He's doing something wrong, in fact, by directing his animals to Bedek HaBayis. How can you say that everybody agrees in this case that that even the animals go to Bedek HaBayis? Behema loy l'mizbechi, isn't really a behema supposed to go to the mizbech? Says, no, you're right. Behema l'mizbechi. Theoretically, ideally, a behema without a mum is meant to be used for the mizbech. But in this case, he said otherwise. He didn't actually say it, but he indicated strongly otherwise. This fellow. Why? How do we see that? Because he was magdish all his assets, which included behemoths and other objects, and the objects are going to Bedek HaBayis. He didn't differentiate. He didn't express himself otherwise. Why not? He's basically sending us a message. I'd like even my behemoths to be used for Bedek HaBayis. Why did this person leave things unspecified? It's as though he said. It's as though he mamash said, Lo yeh el Bedek HaBayis. I want my animals to be used for Bedek HaBayis. Everything that I donated, Lo yeh el Bedek HaBayis. The donation is complete with Bedek HaBayis. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, he had a different approach to explain the machlekes. Rabbi Lezer says, send it all to Bedek HaBayis. Rabbi Shua said, split the fund. So Rabbi Yochanan, loy shani, it makes no difference, absolutely no difference. He had magdish nechasav, whether he was magdish all his nechasim, animals and other items included. He had magdish edroi, whether we're speaking that he was only magdish his herd, only animals. He had machlekes. It's the same machlekes in all cases. He doesn't differentiate between one and the other. He maintains that in all cases, Rabbi Lezer says, the fact that he didn't explain himself, he meant everything to Bedek HaBayis. Rabbi Shua says, let's do him a favor. Let's lift his donation. Let's bring it up to the highest that we can. Behemoths to Mizbeach, as a korban, and other items to Bedek HaBayis. So let's make a summary of the whole sugya. We discussed the person magdish nechasav stam without specifying. Lezer says, we're consistent, we send it all to Bedek HaBayis. Rishon says, animals, the Mizbeach, as a korban olam, that's the highest destiny. Other nechasim to Bedek HaBayis. We have three ways of explaining the machlekes. Rabbi Zeira, Rabbi Bun, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Zeira says, in the case where there were only animals involved, even Rabbi Lezer agrees, it's meant to be used for the Mizbeach because we don't have a raya that he wanted otherwise. You see, if there are also nechasim there, behema and other items, and the other items are inevitably going to be used for Bedek HaBayis, and this fellow didn't get up to say, well, I'm differentiating, my animal should share a different destiny, then we have a raya contra Blazer that it's all meant to share the same destiny. But when we only have animals, we don't have that raya. Let's just assume that he wanted the best for himself. Even if Blazer agrees, that's the Mizbeach. Rabbi Ba took the opposite approach. He went lakula. He said that the machlekes would apply when he was mafresh his behemoths. But when he had behemoth and nechasim, in which case there was an element of that hegdish which is going to Bedek HaBayis. So why didn't he get up and explain himself that I want my behemoths to share a different fate? Apparently he wants everything to end up in Bedek HaBayis. Even if Rabbi agrees in this case, it's all headed to Bedek HaBayis. Rabbi Yehuda says, irrelevant whether it's only behemoths, whether there are other nechasim as well. The shitas remain intact. Rabbi Lezer holds everything Bedek HaBayis because he didn't explain otherwise. Rabbi says the behemoths to Mizbeach and the other chafetzim to Bedek HaBayis. We learned that Rabbi Papias struck a compromise as follows. If he's mefarish his donation, he said, I'm going to give you away my behema and my other objects. So you itemized it, and he still didn't bother stating his intentions as to the fact that behema should be used for mizbeach. He ignored that. He just said, my behema nechasim to hegdish. That's a raya. That he wants everything to head in the same direction. They share the same tachlis, the same destiny, be used for bedek habayis. In accordance with Shiddur Blezer. Whereas if you just magdish stam, you just said my nechasim should be hugdish. He didn't itemize. In this case, since he didn't make direct reference to behema, we don't really have a raya what he had in mind for those behemoths. In this case, we follow Rabbi Shua, behemoths to mizbeach, and everything else bedek habayis. Continues the Gemara. Rav Chuna said in the name of B'Shem Rav, and Rav Avo said in the name of B'Shem Rabbi Yehuda. Kol shebedek habayis shepoidon tmimin. Suppose a person takes an animal with adamum, unblemished behema, which is really roy from his beach, he decides to give it away to bedek habayis, the building fund. It's not appropriate, he's over an isaf by doing so, but the hegdish is chal. It's activated. And he's poida, he redeems it. Yotzeluchulin. It leaves hegdish completely. There's no lingering effect here. It's completely taken out of hegdish, it's chulin. It's considered an ordinary animal. Let's stop for a moment and analyze here. We really have two contradictory elements here in this hegdish. On the one hand, it's a tamim, it's a unblemished animal which is roy from mizbeach. So there's a mizbeach potential here, a kedushas haguf potential. On the other hand, he clearly said, I'm giving it to bedek habayis. I mean, magdish it kedushas damim for its value. So these two facets really associate each other, contradictory elements. Is it kedushas haguf, inherently kaddish, because it's in its form, it's a behema tmima k'miyus in mizbeach? Or do we say it's only monetarily kaddish for its value because he said for bedek habayis, treat it like money? The halacha is we treat it like money, and therefore once you redeem it, it's money for money. It leaves the domain of hegdish yoytze l'chulin. See, as opposed to a kachim mizbeach which has real kedushas haguf, the halacha there is that pidyon doesn't work because it's inherently kaddish. You can't just exchange it for money. It's higher than money. So in that case, you have to actually go through a process. As we learned many times, you have to let it roam the field, let it wander until it gets a mum, in which case it gets downgraded from kedushas haguf, from an integral kedusha, to merely kedushas dam, monetarily kaddish, for its value. It's a money kedusha, in which case you can go and redeem it for money. In this case as well, even though it's a tam, behema tmima, and roy for the mizbeach, but since it was a hegdish bedek habayis, it never acquired more than just a kedushas dam. So if you point it, it's yoyse l'chulin completely. Says the Gemara, masnisin amrkein. In fact, we have a right from a Mishnah to this concept. The Mishnah says, "V'lodan v'chelban mutar lacha b'dyonin." Its offspring, its milk, is mutar after pidyon. Mishnah is speaking about a person who was magdish, a behema, for the mizbeach, for kedushas haguf, but there was one problem. It had a mum, in which case it was not roy mizbeach. Therefore, the Mishnah says, it only acquires a lower level kedusha, kedushas damim, a monetary kedusha, a value kedusha. Therefore, pidyon is completely effective. If it's exchanged for money, this behema leaves kedusha completely and has no strings attached. You can use it, partake in its milk and its offspring, as opposed to a true carbon, which has kedushas haguf. It's inherently kaddish. In that case, when you do pidyon, there are still some restrictions remaining behind. Still some kedusha lingering here. There are halachas, you can't have the chalav, etc. But in this case, since it had a mum to begin with, it was not really roy from his beich. It never had a kedushas haguf. It was only kaddish for its value, a monetary kedusha. So pidyon completely frees it of its kedusha. So how does this pertain to our sugya? Really, it's a different halacha, but they share the same concept. You see, over there we have a behema, hugdash to the mizbeach, kedushas haguf. That was his designation, but the problem, it wasn't royal mizbeach. It had a mum. So we have two opposing elements. On the one side we have kedushas haguf. On the other side we only have kedushas dam. They're contradictory elements. What does the Mishnah say? Which one overrides? Which one supersedes the other, Kedushas Damim wins over. It's considered a piece of wood. It can be poided and remove its Kedusha completely. Likewise, in our case, we have a similar battle between two opposing elements, two opposing aspects. He was Magdish Behemoth Bedek HaBayis. That's money, that's value. But it was a Behemoth Tamima, which is really roy from his Beach, for Kedushas HaGuf. So which one should we focus on? Which one prevails? Says the Gemara, apparently, the Kedushas Damim prevails. It's only considered Kaddish for its value, for its monetary value, in which case, Pidyon can completely remove its Kedusha. Says more, Rav Chizkiah said, B'Shem Rav Chizda. Ti Pater, let's interpret this halacha Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a Magdish Behema Tmima Lebedek HaBayis, and he's poided, it's completely free of Kedusha, Shepadan Tmimin, V'umamu. It's speaking strictly where he's poided, when it was Tamim, but then it got a mum. We need that additional condition to be met, because a mum makes the animal itself unsuitable for akrova. Now it's completely free of any mizbeach potential, and therefore the pidyon is completely effective and it's considered chulin. Rabbi Yosef b'shem Rav Chizda, Mas Nisan Amrken. He says, name Rav Chizda, we have a right for a Mishnah that a mum is a requirement to free it completely of its kedusha. Lord and v'chelben osalacha pidyon. We have a kochem mizbeach, which is kedushas haguf, which got a mum, and then you paid it. Its offspring, its milk is still asur, because it still retains some lingering kedusha effect. And the Mishnah continues, Masha enkim bedek habayis, as opposed to a korban which was committed to bedek habayis, in which case, after it got a mum, we say it's completely free of kedusha. So if you do a pidyon and it has a mum, it goes l'chulin completely. Apparently, a mum is a requirement. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Chizkiah b'shem Rabbi Yosef, he said differently. You don't have to have a mum. If you pay to this animal, this tamim animal, from bedek habayis, yotzal chulin, it leaves kedusha completely. It's considered chulin, even without a mum. You don't need a mum here, because this thing was never more than kedushas dam. And once you offered some money in exchange, it's completely chulin, and it means a right. It means a right from our Mishnah. In tema lo yotzal chulin, because if you'll suggest that it's not considered chulin unless it has a mum, but just being paid alone is not sufficient. I have a kasha for you. Think back for a moment. Rabbi Yehuda tells us in the Mishnah, a person's magdish oz nechasim, without specifying what's going to where. We say it's going to bedek habayis. So it's as though he said, these items are hugdish lebedek habayis. And what does the Mishnah tell us? We still want to use those behemers for in some way or another, for carbon. Meaning we sell it off to a customer. Of course, the money received in exchange goes to bedek habayis as part of the original donation, but we'd like the animal itself to be used for a carbon. So what do? We sell the animal, which is technically kadesh b'kedushas bedek habayis, because that's what this fellow had in mind when he was magdish nechasim. Right? The following sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. It's considered a bedek habayis donation. We take that behemoth, and what do we do with it? We upgrade it. We give it to somebody who needs it for a carbon. How can you do that? One cannot take one kedusha and turn it into something else. Each fund is unique, is special. Bedek habayis has its own designation. Kachim Mizbech is a different type of kedusha. You have no right to change a bedek habayis kedusha to Mizbech kedusha. Even if you'd like to upgrade it, that's not allowed. You have no authority to do so. So in this case, where he took a behemoth which is tamim, gave it to bedek habayis, you're telling me that you can't just redeem it. It still retains some sort of kedusha haguf. You need to have a mum to allow for full redemption, for it to leave kedusha completely. If that's the case, I want to argue that. I want to challenge that from our Mishnah. In tema lo yotzal chulin, if you'll say that without a mum, it will not leave kedusha completely. It won't be considered chulin. Haich kachim mizbeach chulin al kachim bedek habayis. How could Rabbi Yehuda say in the Mishnah that kachim mizbeach will descend upon kachim bedek habayis? Again, we're speaking that it was magdish nechasim, which Rabbi Yehuda interprets as meaning committing them to kachim bedek habayis. So this animal is really bedek habayis. We learned in the Mishnah that it's given to a customer who will use it for Mizbeach. You can't do that. You can't change the Kedusha. Apparently, I'm going to prove my point, that even a behemoth, which is a tamim, but since it's bedek habayis, that's not Kedusha Saguf. That's merely monetary Kedusha. Kedusha is done for its value, which allows you to do anything you want with it. You can be paid it, you could sell it. As long as you receive something in return, receive that money in return, that's okay. This behemoth now is considered chulin, completely chulin. That's why in the Mishnah you can take the behemoth, which is kosher bedek habayis, and hand it over to the customer to be used for whatever he needs, because once he pays for it, that behemoth is no longer kaddish. So we have a raya that if one is magdish a behemoth tmima to bedek habayis, and you're paid it, it's completely chulin. You don't need any other conditions to be met. You don't need a mum, anything else. It's just Kedusha's damim, which can be sold, redeemed, and then it leaves the Kedusha. Says the Gemara, not so fast. You don't necessarily have a raya from the Mishnah. What was your raya? The fact that you could upgrade the Kedusha, you could change it, redesignate from bedek habayis to Mizbeach. That's also right. You can downgrade the Kedusha. You can take a behemoth that was given to bedek habayis and remove its Kedusha completely, because it's only monetarily kaddish for its value. You don't have a raya. Just because you can upgrade doesn't mean you can downgrade. Why? Bali mumen, that's a reference to animals given to the bedek habayis. But generally, to bedek habayis they would give something that has a mum. So the term bali mumen here is merely a reference to a behemoth which was granted to bedek habayis, even if it's not a mum, a tamim. So an animal given to bedek habayis, in which case the kedusha is merely monetarily for its value. Yeah, there's no problem having the more stringent kedusha of mizbeach land on that. You know why? Laida, for which mila thing, for which thing, what's going to be added when the kachim mizbeach arrives, when that additional kedusha arrives? What halachic ramification does it have? Legizav lavaida, for shearing and working with it, because an animal for bedek habayis minat Torah can be used for working, can be used for shearing, its wool, but kosher mizbeach has those restrictions. Now, something which was for bedek habayis is considered as though it still has some space available, because it's not filled to capacity with kedusha. You can still work it, you can still shear its wool, and therefore when he goes ahead and adds, he says, I want to make this kosher mizbeach, there's some room for him to enter, to add some kedusha, because there's some capacity still there. There's some room available to add more kedusha, namely the isser gizav avoda. So since he can get a foothold into this animal by adding this kedusha, by adding these additional halachas of isser gizav avoda, it draws with it the rest of the kedusha of the kosher mizbeach, and now this behemoth can be considered kosher mizbeach kedusha sakuf. So that explains the halacha in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says if he's magdish oz nachasam, behemoth included, although it was really a bedek habayis designate, still it can be sold for the sake of kosher mizbeach, because we can upgrade kedusha. That's okay. However, in our case, we're trying to downgrade kedusha, such as when he has a behemoth, which is a tmima, he gives it to bedek habayis, and he'd like to treat it like a piece of wood. Give some money for it and have the behemoth leave kedusha completely. You want to downgrade the kedusha, you want to remove the kedusha completely, you have no raya that can be done. Perhaps it still retains some sort of kedusha because, look, it was a behemoth tmima, it has a kedusha guf form to it, it's ready for the mizbeach. So perhaps in this case it only works when it has a mum, in which case it's completely unsuitable. In that case, yeah, the pidyon can remove the kedusha completely. So you have no raya from our Mishnah. Just because he can upgrade, perhaps he can't downgrade. So the bottom line of this sugya is, if one is magdish a behemoth tmima bedek habayis, and you paid it, it leaves completely. It's considered chulin. It's considered tushas damim, and not kedusha guf. We have two opinions. According to one shita, provided that it also has a mum, in which case it's completely unsuitable for mizbeach. According to the other shita, you don't need a mum. By that definition, a hegdish le bedek habayis is considered tushas damim, in which case, as long as you paid it, you removed its kedusha, and it's considered chul. Continues the Gemara. Here first nekeva, if one sets aside a nekeva animal, la'oilasai for his oila, which is meant to come as a zachar only, ula pischai or for his carbon pesach, ula hashamay for his asham, the oila pesach and asham can strictly be brought from a zachar. This fellow decided to commit an nekeva for the oila pesach and asham. Oisa tmura, it can generate a tmura. It's considered something which has somewhat of a kedushas haguf element, which is a precondition for tmura. Right, he takes another animal, places it next to the carbon, and says this should be in exchange for that. The tmura becomes kaddish, but that's generally only applied to an animal which has kedushas haguf designation. It's inherently kaddish. It's roy lemizbeach. Says the Tanakama here as well, even though the nekeva cannot be used for an oila practically, or for a pesach or for an asham, still in all, since he designated it for akrava, it acquires some minimal element of kedushas haguf and can generate a tmura. Reb Shimon Omer depends. Lo oila se'oiseh tmura. If he designated a nekeva for his oila, yeah, that acquires kedushas haguf to some extent, can make it tmura. The Gemara soon will explain why. The pischal hashamay eino is a tmura, but by pesach and asham it doesn't work. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Omer mishum Rabbi Shimon, a third sheet. Lo ilasai le pischal hashamay eino is a tmura, nothing doing. So you have three sheetas. According to Tanakama, if he's mafish and nekeva for either oila, pesach, or asham, it has some kedushas haguf. According to Reb Shimon, only for oila it works. According to Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, named Reb Shimon, it doesn't work for oila, nor for pesach, nor for asham. Rabbi Yehuda, let's focus on the middle shita, which is the chiddush, Reb Shimon's shita. He differentiates. By oila it works, by the other ones not. Why? Tarma de Reb Shimon. What's his reason? Shekelim matziru nekeva be'oif. We find that nekeva isn't necessarily a foreign concept by oila. It doesn't contravene the concept of kedushas oila. Why? Shekelim we find nekeva be'oif ksheira la ve'oila. If you have a bird nekeva, you can use it as an oila. There's no restriction of zachar by bird of an oila. That being the case, that oila isn't necessarily a contradiction to nekeva. So here as well, even though it's a behema, which certainly has to be a zachar, but by announcing this nekeva should be used for an oila, even though it's a behema, not really roif akrava, the kedushas oila is applied, because oila is technically somewhat compatible with nekeva. But that's exclusively by oila, as opposed to pesach and asham, which have no connection to nekeva. Let's explain the third sheet. Tamad Reb Shimon Yehuda, who holds that it doesn't work in either case, oila, pesach, and asham. He explains like this: Imim b'minay, who chaluk olav. If we find that even when it's the same type, same gender, it's chaluk olav, it negates it. Meaning, let's say it's a zachar, but it's over age, it doesn't work. It doesn't become kaddish. Koshkin, certainly in this case, it's a kavachomer. Certainly in this case, min b'she'enim mina. When it's a different min, a different gender, he's using a nekeva for oila. It's completely unsuitable and does not have any aspect of a kedushas haguf. Therefore, he says, if you mafish a nekeva for any carbon, oila, pesach or asham, no kedushas haguf, no temura. Explains the Gemara, ezo min b'minay, sho choluk olav. What did he mean that we find that even the same type can negate? Ka'adod detani, as we learned, asham ben shana. A person who was meant to bring an asham within the year. Some ashams need to be within a year old. Ve'evi ben Shtaim, he brought one which was older than that, within the second year. Or ben Shtaim, was meant to bring one within the second year. Ve'evi ben Shalosh, he brought an older one within the third year. Lo yatsa, it doesn't work, and there's no kedushas haguf. Certainly, if he brought it in a nekeva instead of a zachar, it doesn't work. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, this sheet of Rabbi Shimon, who says that a nekeva cannot work for any of these karbonis. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yeshua, back in our Mishnah, Shneim Amru Davar Echad. They both hold the same exact sheet. How is that? Kamad Rabbi Yeshua Amr. Just as Rabbi Yeshua tells us in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yeshua holds that when one is magdish as nechasam, we assume that the behemoths are meant for mizbeach. Right? So if he has zecharim, you bring them as oilos. If he has nekevos, which can't be used as oilos, you sell them to somebody who needs a shlamim. You take the money, you purchase an animal, and use it as an oila on the mizbeach. How could you just sell kachim mizbeach? If we're going to be sure, we treat this hegdish as though he specified, I want the animals to be used for the mizbeach. Kachim mizbeach. How can you take the nekeva and simply sell it off as though it's just a piece of wood? Kachim Mizbeach is Kaddish Saguf, inherently Kaddish. You need to get a mum, first to downgrade it to monetary Kaddish and then sell it. Rabbi Yehuda says otherwise. He allows you to take a behema, which he was Magdish Lemizbeach, take this nekeva, sell it off as a shlamim, somebody who needs it for a shlamim, and use the money to buy an oila. How could you do that? Says the Gemara, apparently, a nekeva doesn't work for oila. So since this fellow had in mind my behema should be used for the highest designation for oila, and amongst them we find a nekeva does not acquire kedush saguf in this way, because it's not ready for an oila. At most it has is kedushas damim for its value, so you can sell it and use the money to buy an oila. So this is consistent with Rabbi Shimon's shita. If you're magdish oila nekeva, it doesn't work. It's only kedushas damim. Kama the Rabbi Shoma, just as Rabbi Shua says, nekeva l'oila lekitcha el hegdish damim. If it's magdish and nekeva for oila, all it has is monetary kedusha, and you can just sell it off. Kenim Shimon Amar. It's the same like Rabbi Shimon who said, nekeva l'oila lekitcha el hegdish damim. If it's magdish and nekeva for an oila, it's only kadesh for its value. In tema kacha kedush saguf, because if you would suggest that according to Rabbi Shua, taking a nekeva and designated for oila gives it also kedush saguf, you can't just sell it. Yiru. You would have to let it roam in pasture till it gets a mum and gets downgraded to kedushas dam and then sell. So it's a raya that nekeva l'oila is only kedushas dam. Amar Rebbe, any raya as divir Rabbi Shimon Pesach. I don't agree with Rabbi Shimon's shita by carbon Pesach. I hold if you mafresh a nekeva for a Pesach, it has kedushas saguf. You know why? Because nekeva is compatible with Pesach in some way. Shamoisha Pesach b'shlamim. We know that a leftover Pesach, it can be used for a shlam. A Pesach is a subcategory of shlam, and since a shlam certainly can be brought from a nekeva, so the concept of nekeva isn't really foreign to Pesach, because within the Pesach we have a shlamim capacity, a shlamim potential, which can be brought from nekeva. Therefore, nekeva doesn't contravene Pesach. If you're magdish a nekeva for your Pesach, it acquires kedusha saguf. So that's Rebbe's shita. Pesach is an exception. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, Valema, you should say, Einani royas to Reb Shimon. I don't agree with Reb Shimon, but Asham there as well. You know why? Sham moiser Asham ba'oila. Because if you have a leftover Asham, an unneeded Asham, you use it as an oila. Now we just learned that oila and a cave are really compatible, although not in animal form, but in bird form they are. And therefore, we learned earlier, if he's magdish and a keva for his oila, there's a svara to say that it works. Now, if an asham can be used for an oila, if the asham is left over, it's used as an oila, so within the asham is really embedded kedushas oila, potential kedushas oila. And if an oila is compatible with the keva, so is asham. So why didn't Rebbe state that? But I disagree with Reb Shimon. I hold that if he's magdish and nekeva for his asham, it works. Amar Be'avin is a big difference. Im higdish pesach ba shlamim. This that we say that when he's magdish a pesach, it turns into a shlamim later. Gufay karv shlamim. The pesach itself is used as a shlamim. That very same animal. Im higdish asham ba'oila, but when he's magdish a asham, which we say eventually can be turned into an oila if it's unneeded. It's not the asham itself. It's not this animal. Ain't gufay karv oila. This guf itself is not used in oila. To let it roam, to get some mum and sell it, use the money for an oila. And therefore, asham and oila are not really closely related. And you can't apply this rationale. Just because oila is compatible with nekeva, asham is not. Says the Ma'u Kadun. So how do we explain the sheet of Tanakama who says that you can apply a nekeva to all these korbanos? For mafresh, a nekeva for oila, for pesach, for asham, it works. How do you explain that? Says the Tanakama holds hegdish damim hegdish. Since he said, I'm using this for the mizbeach, I'm mafresh my nekeva for my oila, for my pesach, for my asham. Although technically it's only kedushas damim, it can't be used for the mizbeach. It's only for its value, but he designated for the mizbeach, so it acquires some form of kedushas aguf and can generate a temur. V'hein but the other shita holds differently. Hegdish gufa hegdish. He needs to be magdish kedushas haguf. He needs to be roy lemizbeach for it to acquire this higher level of kedushas haguf to make it shmur, as opposed to these karbanos, which are not roy from mizbeach. Therefore, there's no kedushas haguf whatsoever. So, in conclusion, we actually have 4 shitas when a person was mafresh in the cave for a carbon. Tanakama says whether it's for oila, pesach, or asham, since he designated it for as a carbon, there's some sort of kedushas haguf that's applied. According to Rabbi Shimon, only by oila, because an oila bird can come as an akeva. So an akeva is somewhat compatible with the concept of oila, and therefore even when he was mafresh a behem on akeva for oila, some kedushas haguf is applied. According to Rabbi Shimon Yehuda, in the name of his father Rabbi Shimon, in all cases, no kedushas haguf is applied. According to Rebbe, by oila, yes, like Rabbi Shimon said, because of the bird, and likewise by Pesach, because a Pesach can turn into a shlamim, in which case an akeva is acceptable. So an akeva and Pesach are somewhat compatible, and therefore, in this case, kedushas haguf is applied, and not by Yosham. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah for a moment. Rabbi Shua tells us when a person's magdish is nechasim, if there are some animals, we take those animals and we bring them as a carbon oil. The zachar is brought directly as an oil. An akeva, sold off, and the money received in exchange is used to purchase an oil. What is the makar? What is the source of this halach? Rabbi Zeira said in the name of B'Shem Rav Shimon Lakish. Tama der Rishon, what's his reason? The pasuk says, Daber el Aaron vel Banov vel Kol Bnei Yisrael. Tell them like this. Ramatale, Ish Beis Yisrael v'Gomer Ashi Yaakov L'Hashem Lo'ila. We learn from here, Ha Koil Korev Lo'ila. If a person is magdish to the Beis Hamikdash and doesn't designate, doesn't specify, well, the animals there, who he brought as an oila. The pasuk said, L'Tzonchem Tamim Zachar. Perhaps it only applies to the Zachar in the bundle. Menayin afilu nekevas. How do we know to apply it even to nekevas, which are sold, and the money used to buy an oila? Tamaloim about bakar. Bakar is a all-encompassing term. All these animals, l'rabos as nekevas, which includes even nekevas, into this halach. Rabbi Yitzchak Bey, the son of Rabbi Lezer, Shal, he asked like this: Ksiv Zachar. Now, although it says Zachar in the Torah, you add even nekevas, but amras bebakar. You say, but the word bebakar, indicating all this livestock, l'rabos and nekevas. That goes ahead and includes nekevas into this halach as well, as we just explained. If that's the case, let's include even a balmum. Udikava say, likewise, we'll say ksiv tamim. Although the pasuk says tamim without a mum, has this halacha of oila, let's go include even a balmum. Vat amris, we'll say like this: but bakar, that's a ripoy. L'rabis balimumin. Even if one is magdish a balmum, that should be used exclusively for an oila. Sell it off, use the money to buy an oila. We know that's not the case. If one is magdish a balmum, it goes to the bedek habayis. If he's magdish a balmum stam, it goes to the bedek habayis. You don't buy an oila with it. Why not? Ma beinein. What's the difference between a balmum, which doesn't have this halacha, and a nekeva, which is also really not roy for akrava? In which case you say, sell it, use the money to buy an oila. Rav Amar, it's very simple. Shivta, the rod, the kadkada of the weaver who uses the rod to separate his threads, beinehen. That's the difference between an akeva and a balmum. Big difference. A balmum is like a piece of wood. It has no suitability for mizbeach. Therefore, it's considered just kedushas damim. For its value, take it to bedek habayis. Whereas an akeva, although it can't be used for oila directly, it can be used for a different carbon, and it has mizbeach potential. Therefore, in that case, you must direct it towards an oila. Sell it off, use the money to purchase an oila. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. We learned that the kedusha of keteris, according to Rabbi Kiva, can be transferred onto work. According to Ben Azai, only on something tangible. If one is magdish nechasim stam, Rabbi Lezer says everything goes to bedek habayis, even the animals, because he didn't specify otherwise. We actually learn it from a pasuk, Ish ki yagdish is beisoy, kodesh Lashem, completely Lashem, which means bedek habayis. We learned that if one is magdish a behema tmima to bedek habayis, he can be paided and completely remove its kedusha in that manner, because only had kedusha's dam. If one is magdish a nekeva for oila, chatas, or asham, we have various shitas as to what happens. And we concluded with Rabbi Shua's right. Rabbi Shua says that the animals within the hegdish are meant to be used for an oila. We learn from a pasuk, Ashi Yaakov Hashem la'oila, hakol karev la'oila. Be well and hatzlacha rabba.